ladies and mental gents.
Hello? Ah, that's better. Had a little squirrel stuck in my throat. Greetings, ladies and mental gents, again, and welcome to the Tales from Outer Space, where I take space-related stories from around the internet and read it out loud for your entertainment. All the relevant links are down below, and don't forget to do the usual YouTube gumph. And, as always, I hope that you enjoy. I'd just quickly like to thank my Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Sergeant Boomer, and Cat Crab Lobster. Again, thank you very much. Story number 1. The Human Carnival, written by Rosie013. Cullen hated carnivals. Actually, that was a lie. Cullen hated large crowds and the attention the rare and exotic species, humans, would inevitably receive. What he wouldn't give to be back home in his boredom, reading fan-fiction comics about pocket monsters TM, and trolling Reddit threads. But his one and only friend on the whole planet had insisted, and Cullen knew that Ib wouldn't have the courage to go alone. They were like that, two outcasts sticking together, because each other was all they had. Cullen was the one of only 3 humans on the planet. Ib was a cripple. 3 of his 8 tentacles had been severed in an accident in his youth, and he was very self-conscious about it. It didn't help that everyone would always stare. It helped them both to feel like the crowds were looking at their friend and not themselves. The carnival was new in town, and according to Ib, it would stay for a week or so before disappearing again for a few years. Last time, they had both been too young to go unattended, so they had acted uninterested. Looking around now, just inside the front gate, it was hard to not feel a little interested at what was on offer. Cullen led the way to the nearest hover coaster, but was promptly denied due to Ib's condition. Bastards! He'd hoped the whole day wasn't going to be like this. Ib suggested something more sedate, like a petting zoo. Psst! That was for young kids. But he wanted his friend to have a good time. That was why he was here after all. Ib and Cullen waited in the short line before being let into the enclosure with some skinny reddish lamb things. They looked like they were being forcibly petted by every juvenile to pass through the front gates all morning, and were very skittish. One reluctantly allowed Ib to pat it, but after a quick sniff in his direction, not a single one would come close to Cullen, not even when he offered them some animal feed that he'd purchased. Specious bastards, just because he was an omnivore and everyone else wasn't. He would just grab one and get a quick pat, get his money worth. Unfortunately, the lamb things started bleating frantically at his approach, almost trampling one of their own number in the haste to scatter. The attendant, who had been busily chatting to a co-worker, told Cullen to get out of the enclosure, or they would call security. Reluctantly complying, the frustrated Cullen and bemused Ib made their exit to more stairs than usual. After wandering around for a while, they ended up in the sideshow. That was much better. There was less people in this part of the carnival. His friend quickly eyed up the strength testing machine in the middle, because there was no queue. Cullen agreed. The young alien woman attending it was rather pretty, if he squinted a bit. Ib knew that his friend Cullen was strong and offered to let him go first. He declined, knowing that if he wanted the attendant to pay him any attention, he would have to have a baseline score to beat. After a few credits changed hands, Ib lifted a large plush novelty mallet over his head and forcibly hit the horizontal target. The machine went crazy, lights and sounds indicating a good but fair score. Feeling chuffed, he handed the mallet to Cullen. With a quick smile, more for the attendant than his friend, Cullen swung the mallet overhead at the target and broke the machine. No, more like obliterated it. Parts had been flung outwards from the impact, smoke poured from what remained. The pretty attendant slowly gaped in shock. Everyone nearby had stopped what they were doing to stare incredulously at the scene. Security came running with a fire suppressant in hand. That, thankfully, wasn't needed. Now Cullen had to hope that he wouldn't be asked to pay for the damage. After a short but stern conversation with the head of the sideshow section, Cullen rejoined Ib and suggested they find some lunch. Fortunately, the Carnival would take no action against him, as hitting the strength tester was kind to the point, and the attendant had no idea that it had needed to be recalibrated for humans. Cullen didn't like the idea that he'd gotten a girl in trouble. He felt rather bad about it. They found a vendor they liked the look of, selling some sort of fried lettuce vegetable, and looked for somewhere to sit. They settled on a patch of grass some distance away. As they ate, a small crowd had started to gather. Some had cameras and recording devices. One was dressed up in what he supposed was a crude human costume. Human watchers, the alien equivalent of bird watchers / furries. Cullen hated being watched like some sort of exotic animal. For a moment, he considered asking security to throw them out for making him uncomfortable, but knew that they never would. They were paying visitors to the Carnival, after all. He recognized some familiar faces amongst them, as his personal fan club was hardly new to him, but knew better than to acknowledge anyone. They would promptly faint with excitement at talking with a human, or get aroused. Neither outcome was good, and they had arrived in time to watch him consume 3 times as much as any other individual around them. Bastards! They would likely follow him and ebb around for the rest of the day. The growing crowd behind them, Cullen decided one more activity before heading home. Ib agreed. He didn't like being watched any more than Cullen did. He selected a simple hoop toss game. Get as many hoops over the vertical target as possible in the time limit and win a stuffed purple giraffe animal toy. Simple enough. Ib felt that he did well. The trick was not to rush so you didn't miss or have the hoop bounce off the target. He had scored 3. Not great, but still enough for the bottom tier of rewards. Meanwhile, Cullen scored 13. Show off. That was 3 more than was required for the highest pride. No wonder the crowds of oohs and ahs had been getting louder. With the stuffed prizes in hand, they walked together towards the front gate. The pursuing crowd had grown so big that it had its own carnival security assigned to it. Once there, they said their goodbyes to each other, and Cullen gave Ib his stuffed toy. He hoped his friend had a good day, despite it ending early and all the other setbacks. He knew that Ib understood. The cameras went crazy as they shared moment of close friendship. With a sudden realization, Cullen knew that most of the crowd was there for him, not the attractions. No wonder the staff was so irritated at his presence. He was competing with their business. He was a living, breathing human carnival. End of story. Story number 2. A persuasive argument written by DanandAngel. Human diplomat on a joint call to humanity's 5 nearest neighbors. Believe me when I say that I understand why you don't like the idea of creating a union. We each have plenty of grudges against each other, and we all think that we could take a bit more of the pie in the coming chaos if we go it alone. But here's the problem. Humanity. Yes, Ambassador Twixie, my people, we are the problem. If humanity goes it alone, we won't have that calm, sober voice of reason telling us to think things through, giving us a nice cup of tea or coffee instead of holding our beer, and slapping us with a newspaper when we get some of our funnier ideas. Do you remember what humanity was getting into before we were contacted by the Galactic Union? Yes, I'm talking about the black hole missile that almost destroyed our sector of space, and the FTL engine that was designed to rip physics a new one. Fortunately, that only destroyed 20 uninhabited systems before we got it pointed at the Andromeda Galaxy. And before you ask, yes, some of our researchers are still studying it. They believe that they now know how to turn it off without destroying the universe. Thank you, Ambassador Marbers. We haven't forgotten the von Neumann swarm that was supposed to turn dead worlds into tropical island paradises. Yes, Ambassador, the people involved learned their lesson, and we're very sorry about your homeworld. But you must admit that you've made a fortune with the human tourism. There was also Project Space Kaiju that none of us want to recall. Absolutely no one, especially humans, want to go through another Mecha Christmas fiasco. Santa Claus is still banned on 23 of our colonies. Honestly, we could keep going all cycle with stupid things my people have done. So, do you want us to be left by ourselves, bored, with no one watching over us as we do something stupid? Or do you want to make a nice little union where you can keep our worst impulses in check, and our nutty but mostly sane ideas will be shared with you and our violent invasion-happy neighbors? I'm glad that we've come to an agreement. Now, let's start writing up the Constitution. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.